Good morning. Happy Easter, happy Passover, happy Ramadan, and happy spring. It was such a joy to wake up to sunshine this morning, and then shortly ago someone said, you know, it's snowing outside, so spring in Ithaca. Welcome to our worship service at First Unitarian Society of Ithaca. My name is Magdalen Lindeberg, and I'm your celebration associate today. Thank you so much for joining us, all of you who are here in person, in your beautiful Easter dresses, some of you, and those watching online. It feels so good to be together on this Easter. Please check our website for more information about how to create connections. If you'd like to receive updates about opportunities for engagement, please email a request to office@uuithaca.org. Newcomers are specially invited to visit our website and complete a newcomer form on the homepage. Our service this morning is being live streamed from our sanctuary in downtown Ithaca and will be available for later viewing on our YouTube channel. I have two announcements this morning. First, believe it or not, our annual online fundraising auction is just around the corner. With only 5 days left to donate your precious items and services, it's time to throw them onto the Bidding Owl platform for others to enjoy. Final donation intake day is this Friday, April 22nd. I personally have donated 2 quilts, one of which is almost done being made. And there might also be some bread being donated as well. Details can be found about donating on searching FUSIT Bidding Owl. I believe there's also a link from the homepage on the website. Second, copies of the UU publication, Widening the Circle of Concern, will be available to sign out at coffee hour after service today. The 8th Principal Committee invites you to read this as background material for understanding the history of UUs of color and other marginalized groups' concerns, and suggestions for improvement toward truly becoming a beloved community within our denomination. Join us for further in-person discussions of the 8th Principle on April 19th at 7 p.m. Again, office@uuithaca.org. if you would like to register for that discussion. Now, inspired by last week's speaker, I think it would be wonderful for us to just take a moment and greet or wave at the people near you and wish them a happy spring. Well, I hope you can join us in the parlor after the service and can continue greeting one another. And for those of you who are at home, maybe look up from your streaming device and take note of the sights and sounds around you, be it sunshine or snow. McRae, my co-presenter this morning, will now light the chalice. Please join me in saying the chalice lighting words written in your order of service. We light this chalice for the warmth of love, the light of truth, and the energy of action. Thank you. Today is the Christian holiday of Easter, and a time of year when many religious traditions celebrate new life and renewal. Next Friday is Earth Day, a day to bring attention to the environment and actions we can take to reverse climate change and renew our threatened planet. In this service, I will reflect on the Easter story and insights it provides on human response to crisis. Afterwards, then Marie will share her journey of responding to the present crisis of global warming and environmental destruction. As we enter this sacred space, may we celebrate Earth and our shared lives. May we recognize our connections to all that is in and on the earth. May we truly and deeply value the inherent worth of all. In this awesome, interconnected web of existence, may we commit ourselves to a new way, and may we hold our commitments and each other dear. Please join me in singing our first hymn, which is 1005 in the Teal Hymnal, Praise in Springtime. You can rise in body or spirit.
Ooh, I'm short, sorry. Nope. There we go. The second verse. There is a typo. It should be holding all the world shall need on the bottom stanza. All right.
You want to invite everybody to the spring celebration?
Oh, that's in my, it's in my time for order. Praise to God and thanks we bring. Hearts rejoice and voices sing. Praises to the glorious one for a year of wonder done. Praise now for the budding green, April's resurrection seen. Praise now for the shining hours, starring all the land with love. Praise now for the summer rain, feeding day and night with grain. Praise now for the tiny seed, holding all the world shall need. Praise now for the garden root, meadow grass and orchard fruit, and for hills and valleys broad, bring we now our thanks to God. Praise now for the snowy rest, falling soft on nature's breast, for the happy dreams of birth, brooding in the quiet earth, for this year of wonder done. Praise to thee, all glorious one, hearts rejoice and voices sing, praise and love and thanks we bring. Good morning, friends. I wish you all wonderful celebrations as Easter, Passover, and Ramadan are all upon us. Speaking of all of these spring celebrations, we are meeting at Stewart Park, regardless of the current snow, in the small pavilion this afternoon at 12:30. I swear the weather forecast says it will be sunny by then. We're going to have some activities and food. I was going to make lemonade, but instead I have some cider warming up on the stove right now. I would like to invite anyone who is young or young at heart to come on down and join me. And then I'm gonna need someone to help me by opening up the Wonder Box. All right, what's in there? Will you do it without stepping on the flowers? Madonna's going to help him put the Wonder Box on the floor so the flowers don't get squished. So now you can probably all see what's in there. We have some eggs. You can pull them all out. So we're in the midst of spring, though you wouldn't know it, a time for growth and birth and renewal, a time of awakening. And eggs play a role in so many of our traditions and sacred celebrations. We have the Christian tradition with its message of rebirth in the resurrection of Jesus, and the Easter eggs, often chocolate or colorfully dyed, that go with it. We have the egg on the Seder plate for Passover. The egg is also one of the foods that can be eaten for suhoor, the pre-fasting meal eaten each day during Ramadan in the Islamic tradition. Eggs, along with baby animals and seeds, are also an important part of pagan spring celebrations such as Ostera. And eggs are not only symbolic of new life, they are new life, or at least they have the potential to be. And woven throughout all of these holy days is the wonder, the sacredness, and the miracle of life. I'm going to read a book to you now. It's called Rodchenka's Eggs by Patricia Polacco. And while I'm doing so, I'm going to invite my friends here to open up the eggs if you haven't already and see what's inside. I'm going to try to hold this up so you can see the pictures. I'm going to have a question about what's in there at the end. Babushka lived alone in Ithaca, a little house in the country. But she was known far and wide for the fine eggs that she lovingly painted. Her eggs were so beautiful that she always won first prize at the Easter festival in Moskva. Each day, Babushka would take the shell of an egg from her basket and paint it in wonderful designs, using the shapes of stars and flowers, triangles and circles. Through the long, cold winter, Babushka painted. Then one day, after a snowstorm, Babushka went outside. She could still hear the faint sound of falling snow. It was a sound like soft rain. Herds of caribou came to feed at Babushka's because the grasses they usually ate were covered with snow. "A miracle," she whispered as she fed some. "These wild things have found their way to me." Just then, a flock of noisy geese honked loudly overhead. As they glided over the snow, one of them faltered and fell from the sky. Babushka went to where the goose lay crumpled in the snow. A hunter did this," Babushka grumbled. She carefully picked up the goose and took it back to her little house. There she fed the little goose from her own table and put the goose in her best basket lined with the warmest quilt from her own bed. "I shall name you a good name. One that we can both like, my little friend?" she said as she patted the goose's head. "How do you like Rodchenka? Yes, then Rodchenka it shall be." With Babushka's care, Rodchenka grew stronger as each day passed. To repay her kindness, Rodchenka laid an egg for breakfast every morning. As Rodchenka got better, she waddled around the little house, exploring every nook, cupboard, and corner. One day, she jumped on top of Babushka's work table, overturning the jars of brightly colored paint that she used to color her eggs. "Neat!" Babushka screamed as she chased the goose with a broom. "No!" The frightened goose flapped her wings to get away and knocked over the basket of eggs that the Babushka had so lovingly painted. The eggs crashed onto the floor and shattered into a million pieces. They were both very sad. There was no reason now for Babushka to go to the festival. The next morning, Babushka slowly got out of bed and trundled over to Rodchenka's basket to get her morning egg. But when she reached into the middle of the quilt, she picked out the most brilliantly colored egg that she had ever seen. "A miracle," Babushka whispered. "A miracle." She made small holes at both ends of the egg and blew the yolk and white into a dish to cook and eat later for breakfast. Then she held the egg up in the morning light and marveled at its beauty. After that, every morning for 12 mornings, there was another egg, each more beautiful than the one laid the day before. Soon Babushka had enough eggs to take to the festival in Moskva. How wonderful, she thought. A miracle has replaced the eggs that were broken. "Spring is here, my little friend," Babushka said to Rodchenka the morning of the festival. "Soon now you will be flying off to the north with your flock." She bustled to the hearth fire and brewed some of her most favored tea. The two shared a saucer of tea with kulik, a sweet Easter bread. She covered each piece with pashka, a spread of cheese, butter, and raisins. They savored each bit together. "One for you, one for me," Babushka chanted. "Da, da, my little friend. I shall sorely miss you, but you are a wild thing, and a miracle sent you to me. It would not be right to ask you to stay here with me forever." When Babushka left her little house, she took one last look at Rodchenka sitting on the doorstep. She waved, then took determined steps for Moskva with the basket full of her precious eggs. She crossed Lebetov Valley, where the caribou mothers were walking their newborn calves. A miracle, she thought. New little lives. A miracle. She crossed the bridge over the Moskva River, and soon she could see the onion domes of old Moskva. The festival was bright and exciting. There were goat carts selling kulik, processions, dancers, jugglers, and laughing children playing and running. Babushka showed her old friends the eggs. Her eggs are the most beautiful in all Russia, they thought. Look at them, the elder said. They almost glow, as if the paint is a part of the shell itself. The judges picked Babushka's eggs as the most beautiful. Babushka was so happy. She beamed as she looked at the first prize, a featherbed quilt. As Babushka made her way homeward, a honking flock of geese flew overhead. Babushka gave them a long, lingering look. She wondered if Rodchenka was one of them. When Babushka arrived at her home that evening, Rodchenka was gone. Alone, she put the new quilt on her little bed. She brewed a cup of tea, ate the last of the kulik and pashka, got into bed with her favorite book of poems, and drifted off to sleep. She hadn't noticed Rodchenka's basket. But that night, Babushka was awakened by a sound sleep, by an ever so small sound. It was coming from Rodchenka's basket. She hobbled closer and saw a glorious egg, but this one was different from all the others. It quivered and moved. It made tiny, muffled sounds. The egg jumped, bumped, rolled, and pitched in the basket. Then there was a crack, and Babushka could see the very special gift that Rodchenka had left for her. All a miracle, Babushka said. And this little goose remained with Babushka always. Thank you for sharing that story with me about eggs, but really about miracles. All right, friends, what did you find in your eggs? A message. Did you decode what the message says? They're so close. Can one of you tell me what the first words is? Or one of the words? What do you think? They're... All right. I don't want to spoil the... She's got it, she's got it. All right, what does it say? It says, we are all the miracle. Right? Yeah, nice work. Thank you so much. So we are all the miracle. You and me here in this room, those watching from home, and not just this community, not just humanity, but all life on earth. And when we talk about our seventh principle and the interconnected web of which all life is part, this is what we mean. We mean awakening to the small miracles that surround us. A baby chick hatching, a new sprout pushing its way up through the earth. All life and this planet and how we are connected to it, how we are a part of it, is the miracle. So on this holy day, this holy week, this holy month, this holy season, I hope that you can awaken to the miracles around you and take that wonder and carry it out into the world so it spreads like seeds on the wind. So may it be.
So, good morning. Can you all hear me? Yes? Okay. So, before I do the formal joys and sorrows today, I want to suggest that we add another dimension to joys and sorrows. On the joy side, we never have enough joy, right? In an effort to nurture a culture of appreciation here at First Unitarian Society of Ithaca, we would like to add appreciations. Who here at First Unitarian Society of Ithaca have you noticed doing something above and beyond? Who has been a quiet, unsung hero, or who is doing an exceptional job of their job? It can be a member, a team or committee member, a staff member, or friend of our community. Please add this category to your thoughts when you think of submitting a joy. Let's sing the praises of the many people who help make our community the wonderful place that it is. In a spirit of reverence, joy, and care, we take time now to bear witness to some of the joys and sorrows of our community, to share those events that call for our prayers and support, our praise and celebration. The first one that I have to share with you is from Liz Einstein, and it's about our beloved Martha Ferger. Our dear Martha Ferger took yet another trip to her family in the DC area. While there, she spent several days in the hospital with heart failure. She has been treated and will be returning to Ithaca later in April to stay with Carol and Bill Claypack, her daughter and husband. It would be nice for her to receive messages of love there. The address is 9 Coventry Walk, Ithaca. In the meantime, keep her in your prayers and thoughts. And I have 3 appreciations. Thanks to the help of 2 fine young people, Gemma MacArthur and Guthrie Graves, 5 box fan air filters were built. Gemma and Guthrie worked for 2.5 hours putting the air filters together, and because of their efforts, our RE classrooms and other FUSIT gatherings will be much safer. Huge appreciation for Sarah Catterall, who has anchored our building and grounds team for many years. She knows more about our buildings than anyone else, other than maybe Sandy. She coordinates all the maintenance and repairs not done by the sexton. When the volunteers can't do the work, she works with the administrator to hire an appropriate contractor. And she does way more than coordinate workdays as one of the quiet people behind the scenes. Thank you so much, Sarah. From Kathy Hopkins, I would like to thank Beth Howard for her constant work with FUSIT for overcoming racism. While so many people are now involved in expanding this work, Beth set up our early discussions several years ago as my earliest memory. Thank you for those appreciations. For those we are holding in our thoughts, in our hearts, and perhaps in our prayers, let us call these names out loud into this community, into this space of healing and hope right now. Phil, Mary, Terry. We extend loving kindness to all in our world, and let us not forget to extend loving kindness to ourselves. Today, tomorrow, and beyond, let our hands be outstretched in kindness, and let us keep showing up to our lives and each other with an open heart, no matter what. Love and courage to us all. Blessed be, and amen.
Our meditation words this morning are from Anne Lamott. Outside our windows now, almost too much beauty and renewal to take in. Well, How does us appreciating spring help the people of Ukraine? If we believe in chaos theory and the butterfly effect, that the flapping of a monarch's wings near my home can lead to a weather change in Tokyo, then maybe noticing beauty, flapping our wings with amazement, changes things in ways we cannot begin to imagine. It means goodness is quantum. Even to help the small world helps. Even prayer, which seems to do nothing. Everything is connected.
In time of silver rain, the earth puts forth new life again. Green grasses grow and flowers lift their heads, and over all the plain the wonder spreads of life, of life. In time of silver rain, the butterflies lift silken wings, and trees put forth new leaves to sing in joy beneath the sky in time of silver rain, when spring and life are new.
So I don't have my script today for the offertory, so it will be a little more spontaneous. But this is the part of the service where we take the offering to sustain the ministries of this church. Giving to the plate is important because it is what sustains us, both in our outward-facing ministries and the ways in which we support one another. The giving information can be found in your order of service. For those of you watching online, I believe it is on the screen and also below the YouTube stream. Take time now and give. You can also, if you choose, write a check and donate to the box here up in front. Please join me in the dedication of the offering with the words printed in your order of service. May these gifts bring about connection, inspiration, and engagement within these walls and beyond. Today's reading is a 2,000-year-old story, roughly adapted from the Gospel of Matthew. And I tell it to acquaint you or reacquaint you with the cast of characters present in the Easter story. Once, there lived a Jewish man by the name of Jesus of Nazareth. He traveled through Palestine, attracting followers and challenging the established hierarchies of his time. The Gospel of Matthew describes the events surrounding the end of his life. So Jesus had been traveling with his followers, and they were now approaching Jerusalem. It is an exciting time. Crowds are gathering, and they wave palm fronds as he rides through the city gates on a donkey. Some are calling him a prophet, the son of King David. But resistance is growing. The authorities, both Jewish and Roman, are challenging him and trying to trap him into breaking their laws. And Jesus himself is predicting that he will be condemned and probably killed. On the first night of Passover, Jesus and his 12 closest followers share a meal. Jesus is subdued, and his followers are a little jittery. Oh, they protest, "We will always support you no matter what happens." But when Jesus asks them to stay awake while he goes to the Garden of Gethsemane to pray, they all fall asleep. Even Peter, who is specifically asked by name to stay awake. Later that evening, armed soldiers appear, and things really fall apart. One of his followers, unhelpfully, cuts off the ear of a soldier. The others panic and run away, and Jesus is taken prisoner. Later on, Peter is hanging out in the street, and people begin to recognize him, but he responds in fear and denies any knowledge of Jesus. Amid this chaos, the only disciple to take decisive action is Judas. He's one of the original 12 followers, but he makes a plan, and in exchange for a fee, helps the authorities identify Jesus in the crowd so they can proceed with his arrest. After Jesus' crucifixion and death, the night before the Sabbath, a small group of followers who remain, including Mary Magdalen, prepare his body for burial. Then, early in the morning when the Sabbath is over, she and another woman return to the tomb, where they are the first witnesses to the foundational event of Christianity. Light flashes, rocks break apart, an angel appears, and then Jesus himself. And Jesus commands them to go forth and spread the message that he has risen from the dead and that a new era has begun. And they do spread the message. But the male followers do not believe Mary Magdalene and her companion until Jesus himself turns up. And in one of my favorite lines from the New Testament, quote, reproaches them for their incredulity and dullness because they had not believed the women. For observant Christians, Easter Sunday celebrates the resurrection of Jesus of Nazareth from the dead and the belief that our sins are forgiven by the sacrifice of his life. While we may not accept this as literal truth, the story contains a great deal of metaphorical power and some very relatable characters. Next Friday, as I mentioned earlier, is Earth Day. Held for the first time in 1970, Earth Day feels more urgent with every passing year as climate change wreaks increasing havoc on our planet and ecosystems. This is a crisis. On this particular Easter, I am focused not so much on the death and resurrection of Jesus as on the very different ways in which Peter, Judas, and Mary Magdalene respond to the crisis in their time. At different times, I've behaved like each of these three people. In many ways, I find Peter the most relatable. He is swayed by Jesus' inspiring words and caught up in the excitement and momentum. He also values being part of an elite group of followers. In earlier passages in the gospel, he is the one who protests loudly when Jesus tries to expand the beloved community by inviting in women and lower caste groups. But when things get tough and Jesus asks him, "Peter, stay awake with me," he literally falls asleep. In the Garden of Gethsemane, Jesus is wrestling with fate and doubt and mortality, and meanwhile his disciples are behaving like the Three Stooges. Jesus returns from prayer and exclaims, "Could none of you stay awake for just 1 hour?" He leaves to pray 2 more times, and both times they fall asleep again. As Jesus concludes, "The spirit is willing, but the flesh is weak." Then, after Jesus is arrested, Peter gets scared. "Weren't you with that man?" the crowd asks. Oh no, but you speak with an accent like his." And Peter responds twice more, "I don't know the man," and then remembers all his promises of support, and as the translation says, wept bitterly. Poor Peter. He wants to be part of the special chosen group, throwing his weight around, impressing Jesus, but he really struggles with the follow-through. And at least some of the time, and this is what makes him relatable, at least to me, he kind of knows that he's being a schmuck. Then there's Judas. In casting him as sort of the arch villain of the story, I think it makes it very easy to dismiss Judas as something that we would never be or never do. But he's also pretty relatable. In this story, he's been a follower from early on, reliable and consistent. After all, he's not the one that Jesus is always chastising for being an idiot, like Peter. But then something happens, and Judas decides to call it quits. Was he tired of the struggle? Tired of the process and debate that goes on with any group trying to enact change? Was he disappointed in Jesus for not launching a violent revolution? It's hard to know from what's written, but something causes him to lose faith in Jesus' mission, so he decides to cut his losses and cash in while he can. And then there's Mary Magdalene, sometimes alone, sometimes with female companions. She isn't a leader and isn't welcomed by the male disciples. But unlike Judas, she does not give up. In fact, at the moment of Jesus' death, the only people still remaining are a Roman centurion standing guard and 3 women, of whom she is one. And in contrast to Peter, she is not sleeping. She stays awake into the night to prepare Jesus' body for burial, one of those ritual caring acts that help sustain a community in crisis. And more importantly, she is awake early in the morning, paying attention and open to experiencing the profound and unexpected. We too are facing a crisis, which Marie will talk about. Climate change and environmental destruction are a different crisis than that experienced by Jesus' followers. But we can ask ourselves, how are we responding? Failing in our follow-through, like Peter? Giving up, like Judas? Or persisting and staying awake and alert to possibility, like Mary Magdalene? Our theme this month is awakening. Even as crisis swirls around us, how do we stay awake and open to the transforming possibilities that present themselves? For me, Marie is one of the people who is modeling this path and will now share some of her reflections.
Good morning, fellow travelers. I'm going to tell you this morning a little bit about my own journey. And thank you. Down a little. Is that okay? And then I'll leave you with a few things that are good to do for the earth. Yes. Thank you. As a small child, I spent my days roaming the farm fields and wetlands around our house. As Anne Lamott says, start over. I often traded my childhood ignorance for amazement in the things I found. I could study the birds and climb trees and find their nests and watch them raise their babies. My childhood wanderings connected me strongly to the natural world. In 1952, the Cuyahoga River in Ohio caught fire. The river caught fire. I was 7 years old, and nobody in my family mentioned the fire on the Cuyahoga. About that time, we were moving to a new house. It was surrounded by acres of woods, and in those woods, the vernal pools became my playgrounds. 10 years later, in 1962, Rachel Carson published Silent Spring. And although, as a teenager, I was horrified by the poisonings that she laid out in that book, I didn't recognize that I had any agency to change that. I thought it was for others, for somebody else to do. The Rouge River near Detroit caught fire in 1969. I was busy chasing a 1-year-old and going to anti-war protests for Vietnam. And in 1970, as Magdalen said, the first Earth Day was celebrated. That Earth Day was conceived to create a nationwide demonstration of concern for the environment. But here we are, 52 years later. We're still trying to broaden that concern from one day to a whole year. Well, my daughter learned not to step on caterpillars and to respect all living things. I tried to live as lightly on the earth as I then knew how. I stopped eating meat. I never used poisons on my garden. But some of us take a really long time to wake up. 15 years ago, the fossil fuel industry knocked on my door. It was the beginning of the fracking boom in 2008. And there were landsmen roaming all over the state of New York looking for land to lease for fracking. These were not people who had read Silent Spring. Very few people then knew what fracking was. We were not yet used to being able to type in a word or phrase to Google and come up with 10,000 answers. We each had to search out information bit by bit, and every single piece we found was worse than what we had heard before. I was jolted awake with the understanding that soon I could be complicit in the destruction of the earth. I couldn't live with that. I joined with a group of my neighbors, and we brought what we learned to our elected town officials. The result was that in 2010, I'm not holding the microphone right. In 2010, fracking was banned in Dryden. And I've lost my place. In 2014, fracking was banned in the state of New York, the first state to do that. And I learned that major change is possible if enough voices speak up. So then people began asking, well, if we turn away from fossil fuels, where we're going for an energy source to keep the lights on? The technology to capture renewably sourced energy has been around for a long time. But in 2013, solar power panels were not widely adopted by homeowners around here. A few friends and I found ourselves at a lecture at IC about community installations of solar power. Out of that gathering, we formed a group we called Solarized Tompkins. We talked together, and we realized that what was needed for people to adopt a change in their energy supply was good information and trusted installers. We set about doing an information campaign. At the end of 2 years, we were among those who were amazed to find that we had precipitated a doubling of the solar panels, the rooftop solar panels in Tompkins County. And I learned that people were really ready to hear the message. All we had to do was carry it to them. In 2015, our group turned our focus to home heating. Heat pump technology is as old as refrigerators, but few people realized that it was available to heat and cool our houses. We morphed Solarized Tompkins into Heat Smart Tompkins and brought heat pump education to the county. Because of our success, New York State has now adopted the Tompkins model, and you can find Heat Smart organizations all over the state. Heat pumps are being made available to everyone. But I don't want you to misunderstand me. In none of this was I the leader. I cared enough to show up. I cared enough to become one cog on the wheel to get things moving. That's all you have to do. Care enough to show up. Yes, in our house we made personal changes, and I behave in my community now much differently than I did in 1970 or even 2010. Those changes are available to all of us. Some are easy, some are hard. Remember, I promised you a list. And here are some of the easy changes that you can do that will make a real difference in mitigating the climate change that we're going through. You can drive less, eat less meat, reuse things, buy used, subscribe to a community solar farm, grow your own food or buy it locally. Attend the town board meetings in your town. Now there's a radical idea. Get to know your elected town officials by their first names. There's a Green New Deal in Ithaca. Learn about it and learn how you could help. There's a plan in your town, yes, your town, to take municipal action that will promote climate resilience. You can find out about it. Let your town officials know that you support it and volunteer. Care enough to show up. But no matter how large or how small the action that you decide to take, you can then view yourself as part of a collective groundswell of environmental groups around the world, so that together we can expand the appreciation of Earth Day from one day to all the days of the year. I'll see you along the way. Thank you.
I invite you to rise in body or spirit and join us in our closing hymn, number 61, Lo, the Earth Awakes Again. Lo, the earth awakes again, Alleluia, from the winter's bond and pain, Alleluia. Bring relief and flower and spring, Alleluia, to adorn this happy day, Alleluia. Once again the word comes true, Alleluia. All the earth shall be made new, Alleluia. Now the dark cold days are o'er, Alleluia. Spring of gladness are before, Alleluia. Change then mourning into praise, Alleluia. And for dirges anthems raise, Alleluia. How our spirits soar and sing, Alleluia. Our hearts leap with the spring, Alleluia.
Our closing words are from one of my favorite philosophers, Wendell Berry. He says, "We don't have a right to ask whether we're going to succeed or not. The only question we have a right to ask is, what's the right thing to do? What does this earth require of us if we want to continue to live on it?" Thank you.